tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. Good evening and blessings to you all. We've come together again to practice Dhamma together, meditate, listen to the Dhamma, maybe have a bit of a discussion afterwards. And we just practiced the meditation on Metta, which means goodwill, friendliness, loving kindness, which is a theme that runs through the whole of the Buddhist teachings and is a practice that I would encourage you, and I think the Buddha did as well, to practice every day. Keep returning to, however familiar you are with the theme, we have to keep working at it because our mind very easily loses metta, forgets it, gets distracted from it, or because of the effect of unpleasant experiences we may have during our day, it gets eroded away sometimes, down to rock bottom, like a flat battery. We're out of metta maybe. So it's something you have to keep practicing every day, topping up your metta, maintaining your metta, so that it's there, sitting in your mind, in the back of your mind. Even if you're leading a busy life with many things to do, it has to be something that you can easily come back to or bring up. Not something that should be far away, that you can't remember how it is when you have metta. It shouldn't be that far away. It should be something very close to you. So it should be part of your regular practice. Because we have this tendency to go to negativity, irritation, aversion, even hatred, things provoke that all the time in our life. So we need something to be ready, a strategy, a practice ready for dealing with those moments. And the whole of the Buddhist teachings, the theme of non-cruelty, non-violence, or goodwill and compassion pervades the teachings, what we call avihingsa. It's, even you could say right up to the practice of nibbana. When we talk about the Buddhist path, we talk about the Eightfold Noble Path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, Samatha, Vipassana. And often, when we're talking about liberation, we're talking on a level of developing deep insight and wisdom into the universal characteristics of existence, to penetrate phenomena, see them in the light of reality, that they're all impermanent, unsatisfactory, not self. But that is not separate from the practice of metta, goodwill, compassion, or non-violence. They go hand in hand. And the word mahakaruna, great compassion, is one of the attributes of the Buddha. That when you look at a Buddha statue or you remember the Buddha, we remember his great compassion. Because he went through great difficulty in his own practice to bring the Dhamma to us. Just as we start our life with our parents, who go through great difficulty, sacrificing their time, energy and love to support us when they bring us into the world. In the same way, the Buddha sacrificed everything to bring us the Dhamma out of compassion, to show us the way out of suffering. So the teachings come from a place of goodwill, compassion, and that theme just runs through them all the time. So it's not removed from insight or wisdom or any of the wisdom teachings in Buddhism. They go hand in hand. One of the things the Buddha pointed out is that in the practice of metta you have to preserve the thought of goodwill. You have to be dedicated to that. You have to give it importance and dedicate yourself to preserving, looking after the thought of kindness, which is why we do it as a meditation, where you're learning to bring up mindfulness and direct it to the thought of goodwill until the mind becomes calm, energized in samadhi. And through developing mindfulness of the object of metta, you can attain jhana, deep state of absorption with that one thought in mind. But the Buddha said we have to learn how to preserve our metta because it's so easily lost. You have to value it and then put all kinds of efforts in your life to just keep your metta there, especially at those times when you're tempted to lose it, to get angry or being provoked by other people or situations or your ill health or whatever it may be. So to preserve something, you have to get to know it very well. So it's part of who you are. And to recognize the value of it, the value of having metta in your mind, in your heart, to know the good work it does in clearing up a lot of our mental agitation and suffering. Because when you establish your heart in metta, it's peaceful, it's calm, even if around you everything is not calm, everything is difficult, there's chaos, there's trouble, there's change, there's challenges in life. When you come back to the thought of metta and preserve it, it can keep you calm and peaceful in the midst of all that. And it protects us, just as we have to protect the thought of metta, look after it, because it's something that's valuable to us. Never let our mind stray far from it. It will protect us. It's such a powerful Dhamma, it will protect you, keep you out of trouble. And what's the worst trouble we get into? Well, it tends to be conflicts with other people because of misunderstandings, competition, different kinds of attachment, jealousies, rivalries, and so on. It's probably the most extreme kind of suffering we have as human beings. When we fall into conflict, at least we have arguments and sometimes even physical altercations with others. So the practice of metta prevents that, protects you from going that far, becoming so angry that you get caught into physical or verbal conflicts. Anger may still arise, but if you know how to turn your mind to metta, it helps you to keep restrained, composed in situations where you might be tempted to lose it, get into an argument or even a fight with somebody, or display any form of violence or aggression. So the Buddha laid great emphasis on this. He repeatedly told the monks, if you give in to your anger, you're not practicing what I say, what I teach. You're not following my teaching. So in regards to this one quality, metta, and the opposite, which is like ill will or even hatred, he set the bar very high. It's not like, okay, we'll allow you to get a little bit angry. And that's all right. There are some things that are not fair in the world, and we can get angry about it. No. If you want to really train your mind to reach Nibbana, you have to root out all anger, ill will, all hatred. Of course, in the course of our life and in the course of our practice, anger, ill will come up, of course. It has its causes. That's karma, isn't it? We've built up attachments through our life, and when those attachments are rattled, threatened, affected by different situations, we get angry. So of course it will come up. But it's more that it's the attitude and the view we have around anger. We have to see that the anger, when it comes up, is the problem. That's what we're working to abandon. That's why we need metta, and to keep bringing up metta over and over again through our day and through our life. It's the indulgence in anger, the holding on to it, dwelling on it. That's where we're going wrong, when we sometimes even recognize that we're angry but stubbornly refuse to let those thoughts go. Maybe because we think we're right. But if you look at the Buddhist teachings, really when you're right, in the sense you think you're right because you're angry, you're wrong. Even if we face great injustice or unpleasant situations, or unfair, unjust behavior from others, things go wrong. In a way, you could say the Buddha is saying there's no excuse to hold on to your anger. When the angry reaction arises, you have to catch it. Become mindful, let it go, and return to metta. Because anger is such a destructive force in our mind and then out in the world. A few angry words can destroy a marriage or a relationship, a friendship. Words spoken in haste, let alone physical aggression, physically harming others, even animals. Can destroy so much. We can even take a life because of anger. So it's something we have to learn to deal with. In your starting point, you have to accept your karma, who you are, your personality. So some people are born and anger easily. Some people anger with difficulty. We say those people have a lot of merit. They don't get angry very easily. You really have to push them to get them angry. But unfortunately, some of us get angry easily. Just a few words and already we're angry, or something goes wrong, we're angry. So we have to learn how to deal with that and accept our karma and accept who we are. But the method, the way, the practice is the same. We're learning to become more aware, more mindful of ourselves, and recognize the harm, the damage that anger does. Like a disease, if we don't clear it up, it tends to get worse, causes more trouble, and can grow into even hatred and become more entrenched in our heart. So the Buddhist teachings they lay great emphasis on this, learning to deal with anger and ill will skillfully, to understand it, but ultimately to abandon it. That's our aim. And there's different approaches that help. The meditation on goodwill I would recommend as guaranteed going to benefit you, guaranteed that it will help you over time. But we also have to reflect wisely on our experience. And the Buddha had to do this as well. The Buddha wasn't born enlightened. He was born as a human being, and he had to go through human experiences just like we do. So if you know the life story of the Buddha, the day or the night of his enlightenment, he was sitting on a seat made of 8 bundles of grass to represent the good and bad experiences we have as human beings, which we become attached to and are the cause of suffering, because we are ignorant, not mindful, without wisdom. We attach to things. We attach to the pleasant, good experiences we have in one way, and then we attach to the unpleasant in another. Usually it's the unpleasant experiences we have that cause us anger, ill will as a reaction. But the pleasant also indirectly cause suffering and anger and ill will in our mind, but when we lose it, or we don't get what we were expecting, or we get it and then we lose it, we can easily get caught into ill will. So these 8 bundles of grass the Buddha's sitting on represent the worldly winds, the different experiences we have, gain and loss, praise and blame, status, power, influence, and the loss of that, and then pleasure and pain, particularly to do with the body, the pleasures of the body, the pain of the body. These are like the 4 pairs of experience that we're subjected to all through our life and are often the cause of ill will and anger to arise. And we can learn a lot about where our anger comes from by studying these things. And this is what the Buddha encouraged us to do. In not getting what you want puts us in an angry mood often. Getting what you want, we like. But we shouldn't be careless or heedless when we get what we want, because it may change, it may not last. The Buddha's encouragement was when you get the fruits of your good karma, when you experience good things, good fortune, good luck, it will come along. So you get gains and praise and status and fame and good reputation and pleasant experiences. When it happens, use it as a boost to your practice. And we have to treat success with wisdom just as we have to treat suffering with wisdom. When things go well, don't become heedless or complacent, but build on the success. So we, every day we might go out to work and work hard, and we get tired and face challenges, but then hopefully we get some material rewards for all that effort. We earn a wage, we make money. So when the paycheck comes, think how to use that well, not just for your benefit, but for the benefit of others, your family, and even in society. If you win the lottery, work out how you can spend that money to help others as well as yourself. Do more dana, practice more charity, generosity with what you've got. Use it to secure your sort of livelihood, get enough accommodation, food, the things you need to live, and then you can practice comfortably. So there's nothing wrong with earning a living and earning money and attaining wealth, but the question is, how do we use it? But also be aware it's impermanent. You earn money, then you spend it. You gain good things, and then you lose them. Same with praise and blame. You gain praise, people like you, they say nice things about you, write nice things about you, you get a good reputation, but it's not sure. But when you have it, use it to advantage. If you've gained some credit with other people, you can use that to help people, can't you? You've got credit so people might trust you, look up to you, then you can maybe use that to help others, to give advice, to give support in different ways. Use it to support your practice. Same with any kind of status we gain in the world. When you gain status, you gain some influence, some power and position, some authority. We'll use it to help others. Use it to boost the practice of Dhamma in your life. When we have pleasure, good health, say the pleasure of good health, our body is reasonably healthy, we don't have any particular illness or injury, we'll make full use of that to practice the Dhamma. When you have good health, your body feels at ease, you're in a very good place to practice meditation, listen to the Dhamma, practice the Dhamma, help other people because of that situation, good health, pleasure. So build on it. So all these 4 parts of the worldly winds that are positive, the successes, the good things that happen in our life. And the Buddha warned us not to just go idle and just take them for granted or sit back and say, oh, I've done it, I've reached my peak, I've got my success, now I'm going to sit back and take it easy. He encouraged us to use them as a platform to go on and do more good in our life. Use the success, use the pleasure, use the good things that come our way, our good fortune, and build on it. to help ourselves, help others. When it's the opposite, the loss, the criticism, the loss of status and reputation, physical pain, illness and so on, we have to treat it differently. We have to treat it with wisdom. Learn from the losses, the failures, the painful experiences. They're our best teachers. And they're the first incidents or occasions when we'll probably fall into anger or ill will. So already as somebody following the Buddhist path, learn to reflect ahead of time. What will I do when I become ill? Be aware that I may become ill, or sometimes I might get some injuries or painful things will happen. What will I do when I get criticized or some unfair situation arises? I'm criticized and it's not true, or I get some kind of result in my life that's just unjust, shouldn't have happened, but it happens. You lose something, you lose your position, lose your status, or you lose your possessions or your material wealth even. Be ready for it. Contemplate the impermanence of these things. When you get wealth, you can lose it. When you get praise, it can turn into criticism and so on. Be aware of the impermanence of things so that when it happens, you understand these are what we say conditions. The conditioned nature of our life is we don't always get good fortune. Sometimes we experience misfortune. But be ready for that. Be prepared to take it on as a part of your practice. Again, it's the fruits of our karma. Things come up for a reason, a cause. But learn from them. Take them as your teachers rather than just reacting with aversion and ill will when the misfortune comes. Try to take it in your stride, take it as a teaching and move on from it. That way you're turning misfortune into good fortune, or dukkha into sukha, or failure into success. And that's it's a skill, it's a mode of practice that we have to learn as human beings. A kid learns to walk because they've fallen over so many times, they just get up, keep getting up, they don't want to fall over again, so then eventually they're learning to walk now because they don't want to fall over. But they've learned by falling over. And that truth applies through our life. We learn a lot through our mistakes and misfortunes and the injustices and the things that happen to us. So reflecting wisely on our experience in this way, learning from pain and discomfort and failure, and building on success and using it to support our practice. This is using wisdom to deal with the normal experiences of life. And getting to see these are just normal, so that you don't just react with anger when things go wrong, but you can accept them and say, these things happen. Very simple example of this is like people come to our monastery here. We're on the outside of Melbourne, so we're about 80 kilometres from the CBD, and over the years many people have experienced a flat tyre when they're driving to the monastery. They just drive out of their house and a quarter of the way or halfway or almost at the monastery, and they get a flat tyre for whatever reason. And you always see people react differently to flat tyres. Some people just take it in their stride. They just, flat tyre, and maybe they call the roadside mechanic, or they change it themselves, or they call a friend and get a lift and sort it out later because they want to get to the monastery. Some people treat it as just one of those ordinary things that happens, and they sort out the problem quickly, calmly, and move on. Other people, it's like overwhelming. They get really angry, blame the car manufacturer, blame somebody who left rubbish on the road that's got stuck in their tyre, blame this, blame that, get really angry. Same incident, but different reactions. This is like people learning or not learning how to deal with the ups and downs and the good and bad experiences that come our way. Everybody will react differently. But one who's practicing the Dhamma, who's maybe developed a practice of metta, so they're used to how to deal with these ups and downs, keep their mind in a wholesome state, not go into anger, well, they can just accept what's happened and move on and don't create further suffering out of it. And then through extension of that same practice, other maybe more difficult situations arise, such as like illness. Everyone in this world gets ill, but we don't all deal with it the same. Some people have a foundation of metta, karuna, they have kindness, compassion, they can bring that up quite quickly when they get the news that they've got cancer, or they have their cancer already and they're dealing with the unpleasantness of the treatment, say, or any other similar illness. They use metta and karuna to deal with it, to cushion the mind, not to sit there dwelling in aversion for themselves and feeling a failure, or for the world around, or feeling it's not fair, unjust. They keep their mind in a wholesome state by going to the thought of metta constantly, regularly. Whereas someone else gets their mind dragged down and they don't see or understand how to bring it out of that, say, depression or unhappiness or anxiety that's formed based on that illness. Life is a mixture of experience. That's what the Buddha pointed out. You're born into the world as a human being. It's not all easy and good experiences. We do get them, but we get a mixture. And sometimes things go wrong, failures happen, we get ill, things go wrong, we lose our job, people don't like us, people treat us badly, and so on. These things happen as well. So one of the qualities of mind that helps you to deal with that, go through all that, through your day, through your life, is the quality of goodwill. And goodwill isn't a blind positivity, just sort of trying to always see the good things in life, and not acknowledge that there are things that go wrong and there are painful experiences. But it's good mental health, a quality that helps you to go through the difficult experiences. It's backed up by the practice of mindfulness. To develop metta, you need mindfulness, awareness, practiced, directed to the thought of metta. So when you're mindful and you direct your mind to the thought of metta, particularly at a time that's maybe difficult, traumatic, or you're under pressure, or you're tempted to lose your temper or something like that, establishing mindfulness, going to the thought of metta, the feeling of metta, is good mental health. It helps you to stay calm and in a more wholesome, skillful state of mind as you face difficulty. So it's something you have to practice. And best of all is not wait until you're angry or miserable to practice it. Begin early, practice regularly. Practice whether you're angry or not. Practice whether your life is successful or you're meeting with failure or difficulty. Do it regularly and learn to preserve the thought of metta in all situations. Have it right there in your mind so you can turn to it when you need it. And it can minimize your suffering in so many situations. You can't control the world around you. These 8 worldly winds are coming at you all the time, praise and blame, gain and loss, success and failure. You can't always control that, even though we fool ourselves, we think we can, but we can't. But we can control our reactions, how we deal with these ups and downs of life. So the Buddha encouraged us to always develop metta, goodwill, and that leads on to the thought of compassion. Daily, every day. Things are going well, bring up metta. Things are going badly, bring up metta. So it's all the time it's there. It's part of who you are. You can be a grumpy person and still have metta. In Thailand, you get many great meditation masters who all have their own character. Many of them we consider to be arahants. But you notice, some of these great meditation masters, they're not all very kind of soft and loving in their characters. Some of them can be quite gruff And they can be quite critical of people who are acting inappropriately or doing things wrong. And they come across as quite, gruff people, grumpy people. But at the same time, if you live with them, get to know them, you realize they're coming from a place of metta. It's just their character is to display their metta, sometimes with a few strong words or a few strong criticisms. So I think pretty much every meditation master I've lived with or met, they've had that side to them where normally their mind is dwelling with this great kindness and compassion. But if somebody is really doing something wrong or harmful, well, they can give them a short, sharp rebuke sometimes. I remember the very first time I went to stay with Ajahn Mahabua, who's famous for being very kind of fierce, kind of gruff type of teacher. Somebody was lifting up a tray full of food, but they weren't doing it very well. This was at the meal time, and they slipped over and all the food and the plates and everything went flying everywhere, created a big noise and a big mess. And he just shouted out really loudly. He said, "It's a lot of fun coming to the monastery. People love to just take it easy here, and they're never very careful with the way they carry things." So it was a very harsh kind of thing to say, because the person was probably not very happy because they'd dropped everything. But he was just trying to get them to be more mindful and realize, it's important when you carry a big tray of food, you have to watch what you're doing, be careful. He was giving a teaching to the whole assembled group of monks and lay people. So perhaps he thought it was a good opportunity just to point out that someone was being very careless. But that could be coming from metta, couldn't it? When somebody's careless, sometimes your metta has to come out in that way. If you have a child running around all over the place and they're about to run into a busy road, sometimes you have to shout at them to save them, stop them doing something that's going to harm them. So some of these arahants, they can be quite fierce and gruff, but at the same time you get the impression they also have a heart of gold, a heart of metta. So it's not always just positive words, soft, gentle words. Maybe a lot of the time it is, but it can also be something quite fierce, or quite something to wake you up when you're lost in your thoughts or daydreaming or doing something harmful. So the practice of metta, we develop as an ongoing thing, learning to turn the mind to metta easily. We sometimes talk about it as the lubrication of the mind. That if you have an engine of any kind, you need oil to lubricate it. If you've got moving parts rubbing against each other, you need lubrication for that engine to work well. And your mind is the same. You need to lubricate it with the practice of metta, because on the outside we're rubbing against other people in the sense we live together, work together, and often we can affect each other through what we say, our thoughts, our words, our deeds. We can sort of cause friction with others. So we need lubrication just so that that friction doesn't develop into something harmful or destructive. Fair enough, you may have disagreements, different views of opinions on others, different behaviors, but you need the lubrication of metta so your existence together doesn't become untenable, unworkable. You still have a certain level of appreciation of the other people around you, even if you don't agree with them. There has to be metta there for the mind to be lubricated. And when metta is there, mindfulness will be there, then your mind can also think well. We can use wisdom and reflect. We say yoniso manasikara. We can reflect on what is going on, what is the experience we're having, say if it's with another person and there is friction, rather than just dwelling on the negative aspects of the person or their views and opinions or what you don't like about them. With metta you can look at it from different angles. And they say, like, when you look at another person with metta, you always see them more like a relative and a friend than an enemy. That means even if they've got a different opinion from you, or they're doing something harmful, you're not looking on them with eyes of wanting to destroy them or harm them. It's the eye of what can we do to improve this situation? They are doing something wrong, or I don't like them, but how can we improve on this? Because if you've really got metta there, you want to improve your own life and you want to improve the lives of others, even people who are doing unskillful things. And what's the alternative? The alternative is distraction. You want to harm them, get back at them, shout at them, abuse them, argue with them, whatever it may be, and that only makes it worse, doesn't it? So the whole Buddhist path has this flavor of harmlessness, non-violence, the development of goodwill, but how we apply it with different situations will depend on the situation, what is appropriate. Same with ourselves. Sometimes we get caught into depression, anxiety, anger ourselves. We have to look at our own negative state of mind with goodwill and see what needs to be done. And sometimes we need to very gently pick ourselves up. Other times we have to be quite tough on ourselves because we know we're thinking in a way that is very destructive or harmful to ourselves or maybe to others. So your metta may come out in different ways, but you always have to be coming back to this place of goodwill, well-wishing for oneself, others, wishing them to be free from suffering. So this is the non-violent way of solving problems, whether it's through body, speech or mind. Sometimes they talk about those who do become enlightened through the Buddhist path, and they talk about the 4 levels or stages of enlightenment. There's the Sotapanna, the stream enterer, Sakadagami, once returner, Anagami, non-returner, and then the Arahant. And they say, one way of looking at it is 4 depths to the practice of non-violence. So the Sotapanna is somebody who has learnt, they may still have anger arise, ill will in their mind, but they've learnt not to put it into speech or action. So they keep a standard of virtuous behavior. They're somebody who is safe, trustworthy to be with. They don't break precepts. They don't harm others deliberately, consciously. So they've reduced the level of, or the potential for violence right down to so it's all that's left is what's arising in the mind. They no longer display any form of violent behavior in body or speech. The Sakadagami, the once returner, they've done this, they've reduced their ability, the potential for anger even more, but anger may still arise, but it may come up just as passing moods or images. Something happens and they get angry, it's just a flashing image maybe. The Anagami has completely removed attachment and identification with the body, the physical body, so there's no basis for anger to arise anymore because ill will is just gone, because the mind is free from the body, it no longer attaches to the body. The mental defilements that are left are just the most subtlest, attachment to jhana or attachment to the subtle sense of self and the subtle ignorance. And the Arahant has completely abandoned that. So you can see at each step it's like a weakening of the potential for aggression, violence, whether first of all on the outside and then on the inside. We have to understand the most subtlest forms of violence are actually to ourselves by holding on to ignorance and the thought formations, mental states that arise out of ignorance. That's still, you might say, a form of harm or violence to ourselves. Every time we hold on to a negative thought, identify with it, cling to it, even if we're not saying or doing anything on the outside, we're still harming ourselves as one human being. So our practice of metta, you could say, is not yet complete, because if we genuinely wish ourselves well, may I be well, free from suffering, one who has perfected that, they're not going to hold on to a thought rooted in greed, anger or delusion. So the Buddhist path is like a progression of reducing our violent tendencies, our aggressive tendencies on the outside, then through to the inside, and then finally abandon, and that's the arahant. And the world needs more arahants, needs more people who are willing to work with their own anger, ill will, hatred, and abandon it, because it's the most valuable thing the world can benefit from. One of the visions or images of metta that everybody uses is the image of a mother, the mother's love for their son or daughter. So it's a very good one to bring up when you're struggling to find the thought of metta. What does it feel like? If you're a woman, tomorrow is International Women's Day. If you're a woman, you may already have that. Particularly if you're a mother, you can go to that thought. What's it like to have unconditional love for a baby, boy or girl, even though they make a lot of noise, demand a lot of time, wear you out, vomit all over you, make a mess everywhere? The mother's love doesn't wane, doesn't disappear. It may be put under pressure, but it doesn't disappear. So that's a very good image to bring out. If you're trying to find the thought of metta, what is it like? Unconditional love. It's like a mother with their child, ready to forgive, always ready to feed, look after. But as a man, you have to maybe work a bit harder sometimes, because men tend to be coming more from the place of strength, confidence, reliability. So we have, maybe sometimes men, you have to work harder to bring up the thought of metta. But if you practice meditation on the theme of loving kindness, you're internalizing that thought and the feeling. So gradually the sense of being a man or a woman starts to fade, and your mind is just merging more with the thought of just unconditional goodwill, friendliness. And the aim is to get to the point where your mind is complete, full of loving kindness, friendliness. There's no space for anger to slip in. That's the goal. So of course, if anger or ill will slips in, you have to work on it. That's where you have to work at it. Whether it's with a person or when things go wrong, situations arise that are unpleasant, you have to work at that. Keep establishing the loving kindness, which brings the tolerance, the lack of, you're not dwelling on what you don't like about the person or the situation, you're accepting it. So there's a sense of tolerance and acceptance, just as a mother has acceptance for her kid, even though the kid may be naughty or troublesome or demanding in one way or another. At the same time, your metta has to be guided by mindfulness and wisdom. Someone was telling me a story recently about, it just illustrates the point. Sometimes our metta goes wild, goes wrong. Mothers can still spoil their kids sometimes. We overdo it, we give them too much, or we don't want to tell them to do something they don't want to do because we don't want to see them suffer. So maybe there's something they need to do, but we forget to tell them or won't tell them. So metta has to be guided, doesn't it? Like this story they're telling me, there are two guys who lived next door to each other, and one was a retired civil servant, an older man, and one was a younger engineer who was working, earning money, upcoming engineer. So they both were into gardening, and the engineer had a garden, and because he was young, earning money, he's put lots of money into it. He bought all the right soil and fertilizer and bought all these really nice looking plants from the garden centre and put them in. He'd mow the lawn, and he tried to have that perfect garden, not a weed anywhere, everything looking very lush and well watered, well fertilized. Whereas the retired civil servant's garden was totally different. He planted things, but he had a more kind of laid back approach. He did weed a bit, and he watered the garden a bit, but it looked a bit messier, not that kind of modern, pristine look that the engineer had. It was more kind of a bit rustic, a bit rough. Things didn't look quite so glossy and glamorous as the other garden. But anyway, they both went on looking after their gardens, and then one night there was a terrible storm through the neighborhood. And in the morning, the engineer came out, and all his plants had been blown over and fallen over and destroyed by the wind and the heavy rain. And it looked terrible. And the other garden, the retired civil servant's garden, he came out, and it looked pretty much the same as before. The plants were all there, still standing, the flowers were there, everything looked much the same as before. And the engineer's like looking over the fence, it's like, what happened? How come your garden is still looking so good, untouched by the storm? And the retired guy just said, well, the way I did it is I only watered them just enough, gave them just enough fertilizer, looked after them just enough so that their roots went down really deep, looking for more water, looking for nutrition. So when the wind comes and the rain's heavy, they don't all collapse and fall over. You've watered yours a lot and you put a lot of fertilizer on, so they grew quickly and looked nice for a period of time, but their roots were very shallow, so they quickly fell over in the storm. And metta has to be guided like that, doesn't it? It has to be guided by wisdom. If you really want someone to be free from suffering, you also have to want to give them the tools and the means to free themselves from suffering. So just to spoil somebody with metta maybe is not the best thing for them. Metta can have its different ways. It can be sometimes, getting people to learn for themselves what they have to do. So you're in the background kind of overseeing or just letting them get on with it, but you don't hover around, the helicopter parent or whatever. You don't hover around doing everything for them. Nowadays you see it, kids go to school, come home, they got their assignment, and the parents are so worried their kids won't do well in school. They do all the homework for them, and the kids are not learning anything. They say, Mom, I can't do this, and Mum does it all. It comes out immaculate piece of homework, and they go to school. They got the marks, but they didn't learn much. Then we have to watch it with the metta. Sometimes you have to let kids or adults, make mistakes so they can learn, get on, learn from those mistakes. Sometimes you have to let them be patient, put up with their desires, not give in to their desires and always get them what they want, or try and buy them off with sweets and gifts and presents and so on. So metta has to be guided with wisdom, with understanding, and applied in the right way to ourselves and to others. If you have true metta for yourself, maybe you get up in the morning and your mind is saying, it's cold, I'm tired, I'm just going to sleep. But if you have real metta for yourself, you might say, meditate. I've got an hour before work, I'm going to meditate. And that might be real metta. So metta is qualified and balanced by mindfulness, by wisdom. And you have to see what's appropriate for the person or the situation or yourself. That comes through experience. The more you practice metta, the wiser you become, and the better you see how to apply, even in the worst situations. I was talking to someone today who's dying from cancer. And it's like, oh, what do? You know you're going to die quite soon, probably because of this cancer. How do you deal with it? Bring up the metta. But it's not like a sugar-coated metta, oh, there, everything's going to be all right. But what you're doing is you're accepting the limitations of a body and a disease and your karma, but you're making sure your mind doesn't slip into depression or anger or ill will in that situation. So you have to work to maintain the metta, bring up that thought every day, even meditate, even lying on your back, very weak, you can still do it. So metta has many faces, many ways it's applied. Sometimes it has to be tough and gruff and hard, and sometimes it has to be soft and soothing. Sometimes it has to be used skillfully to bring out the best of a person in the situation. So tonight, just giving you a few thoughts on the practice of metta as a meditation and also as a theme of wise reflection in daily life. But the whole of the Buddhist path comes out of this, the thought of well-wishing for oneself, what is truly well for oneself and others. And the metta we develop, this lubricates your mind, lubricates your practice as you live in this world with its ups and downs and unexpected, unpredictable situations. So maybe I'll leave the talk there, and I think there's time afterwards for some questions.